Boom. We are here. We are here. Let that bitch breathe. A little housekeeping. If you're listening, rate and subscribe and share and all that. Also, if you're listening, you can watch the podcast on Big Moo TV and share that. Share Big Moo TV. Workout content's been going up there. Got a new workout video going up there today, or no, this week. What else? Shout out to Dopesick. They're a social media platform, social media page that like highlights people in recovery. And I told my story on there, like a brief story on there a couple months back. They have people share their stories and their experience quite often. But they sent me this dope windbreaker. This shit is fire. And it inspired me to do all black everything today. So shout out to Dope Sick Apparel. Fire. And yeah, what else? Oh, let me just jump right in. So last week my brain took a shit. Last week we talked a lot about sex addiction. We talked a lot about my past life, and other people heard it. Other people heard what I spoke about and were like, "Oh shit, he's talking about it." He's talking about it because I don't know one guy who doesn't have at least an interesting experience with pornography, at least interesting, and doesn't have an interesting sex relationship, men and women. This is not purely a man problem. I only know, not even a man problem. It's not even a male topic. I only know the male experience. I only know my experience. So what I'm going to do today is share kind of my story in regards to sex addiction and the work that I've done not over it, but with it, the work I've gotten to do with it, especially in the past year and over a number of years. I've really gotten the opportunity to explore this. So I'm going to talk about it and speak about it in a little more in depth of my story and how I got into this, not into this predicament, but got into this experience, and maybe you'll hear a part of your experience. And I'll try to share what I can to make it to be illuminating for the male for female listeners of the male experience, and then what I perceive of the female experience, because that's all I have is perception. But we will have someone who specializes in sex addiction on the podcast. I have a lot of contacts I just forgot until just now, but I'll text somebody after this, and we'll probably have them on the next couple of weeks. So since this is something that is come up, and it's come up in on the podcast, but it's trickled into after people hearing this trickled into my life, my personal life, and into my friends, and people heard it and were like, "Oh shit, let's talk about it." So let's start. So I'm gonna tell my story real quick. So until I was 25, like I'm gonna share personal stuff here, but until I was 25, 24, I didn't know, but I had an unhealthy relationship to the sexual experience. And what that looked like for me was just hypersexuality. Just, when I would meet someone, it would be sex every day. I would need sex every day. And like, honestly, now being 30, the idea of having sex every day is fucking exhausting. It's like, how dare you? Don't come at me with that. But when I was in my early 20s, it was just like sex every day and masturbation every day. So it was like, just constant obsession with the sexual, with my sexual urges. But that didn't start when I was 25. But what I realized when I was 25 was a sexual experience I started having as a young child there's this guy, Ryan. I'm going to say his fucking name. I don't know his last name. And we can't find him. I actually called the summer camp where he worked and to see if I can find him. I'm not mad at him or anything. Like, I'm not angry, but I would definitely say something, and let him know how I feel and what that I remember, But what he would do is, I've always been kind of, I think, now having kids, there's like this age at like from like 6 to 11 where boys are just sexually ambiguous, like they're kind of flowy, they haven't found a masculine energy, or well, some boys, my little one is very masculine. He's very, very masculine, but he's had me in his life, his whole life, and he's seen me be masculine. So and then he sees his brother older than him, be a boy and play video games. But his older brother grew up with mostly women. So he's just a little more flowy. So I was at that age and between 6. So when I was a little kid, this guy would sit me on his lap and say, Eric, you're gay. You just don't know it yet. Like you don't understand what that means, but you just don't know it yet. And he would sit me on his lap. And I remember spending time with him privately. I don't remember specifics to what happened, but I know that starting at 6, I spent time with him privately. All throughout my experience with him in summer camp, he was like, I would sit on his lap and I was like his little pet, and it was cool because like in the summer camp, everybody had like girlfriends and boyfriends and like, oh, it was like, little relationships happening. But I was in this little relationship with this dude, like this was like my guy. He gave me my first unedited CD. He was like, well, he's like, your parents, don't tell your parents or your brother, you shouldn't have this CD. It has cuss words in it. And we just had this relationship. We had a relationship as people. And up until I remember being 11 or 12, when I started masturbating, he would send me porn and talk to me about what jerking off was and how he liked to do it and all this stuff. Okay, so I had this. So that was from 6 until puberty, and then we lost contact. Obviously, it wasn't internet age, and I didn't think anything of this. Until I was 25 years old. I thought nothing of this when I was 25 years old, until I was 25. But in junior high school, I was hypersexual. I was already thinking, and by 8 years old, I already saw porn. And my therapist was like, when I spoke about this, when I saw porn for the first time, I knew it was bad. And she said, Eric, what's interesting about that is if I showed my little baby, my little one, my 3.5-year-old, like a pornographic image without any context, he wouldn't know whether that was good or bad, right? Like he would see something inappropriate. He may be like strange. He may be perplexed by it, but he wouldn't have a good or bad connotation, right? But by the time I saw porn at 8, I knew that it was wrong. I knew that I shouldn't have seen that. So I already had a negative association to sexuality as a young kid. And then everybody, dad has a porn stash. And I would sneak and watch my dad's porn stash. No fault on his. I think before the internet, there was people's dads had a porn stash, right? Like whether it was porn magazines or whatever, you go under the bed. But my dad had a porn stash, and I was obsessed with sneaking it in. And then we had these little black boxes that gave you. It was like you could boost cable. I don't know if anybody you remember those. That you could steal cable and have all the channels. And then channel 67 or 69 was like the Spice Channel. Am I right? Do you remember this? Was the Spice Channel. And I remember flipping to the Spice Channel, watching a second of it and flipping it off. And I remember the first time I saw a girl's vagina, like saw a girl's vagina motion, in motion, like her in the shower, and I was like, "This is fire," and I knew I liked that, but but um, in this time, this guy was sending me images. And he sent me like trans porn for the first time. He would send me like this beautiful, perceivingly beautiful woman, and then you scroll down because this is like AOL days, so it's not like a full image on a screen. You scroll down, then there's like this huge dick on this fucking woman. So he was sending me, and this is he's a gay man, I'm assuming, and he was just sending me stuff. He would send me cartoon porn. He would send me, and then talk to me about masturbation on AIM, But then by the time I was in junior high school, I had a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend by the time I was 12. Shout out to her. I still know her. She's cool as fuck. She's doing well. And then I had my second girlfriend, my third girlfriend, and I was already cheating on girls by the time I was in junior high school. I already had multiple girlfriends at a time, making out with one, then making out with another in the same day. I was already doing that. So looking back in retrospect, like I was already a cheater before I was even fully into puberty, or like in my middle puberty. I was already cheating, and obsessed with girls. Meanwhile, this guy has implanted in my head that he's like, Eric, you're gay. You just don't know it yet, right? He's like, you just don't know. So I've had this looming, like, am I gay? Like, am I, questioning this? But meanwhile, I'm obsessed with girls, seeing porn on the television, looking at a vagina for the first time, just being like, oh man, that shit's awesome. And then, so that was junior high school. And then high school, had a girlfriend again. I didn't fully lose my virginity until I was 15, or even 16. But I remember making out with every girl and trying to make out with every girl. And we would all like pull our dicks out and like pull our asses out. And we were just very hypersexual kids, even hypersexual like boys doing gay ass shit, like there was that going. So there's still this hypersexuality that I started having sex. And it was, I had a girlfriend, and it was like, I remember, we say that, but I remember like, and I still would get this way when I meet women. But I would remember having like sex every day, all day. It was just like, if we could have sex 5 times a day, I was willing to do that. And I was up for doing that, or trying to do that. So it was constant. And at that time, you think that's what love is, right? You think, especially for me, I had this guy as a kid who was my, like, I'm in a relationship with this guy, right? And it's not a dating relationship, but this is my first introduction to any kind of sexual relationship, and I'm at 6 already, and it's building up. So now I'm thinking that sexuality is tied to, like, hypersexuality is tied to love. And during this time, this girlfriend, of course, I'm cheating on, and I'm recklessly trying to fuck everybody. And this pattern continues. So I was with that girlfriend, cheating for 4 years, from, not 4 years, 3 years, from like 15 or 16 until I was 18. Then I was single for maybe 6 months, but again, trying to fuck everybody. And then I had a girlfriend from 19 to 22, or 20 till really 23 when I came to California, cheating the entire time, hypersexuality. Then and add drugs on top of all this, added tons of ecstasy, tons of coke. Even when I was on opiates, even though I couldn't come, I was still just obsessed with sex, trying to fuck everybody I could, trying to fuck my girlfriends as much as I could, and still cheating on top of this. And then I got sober. And I had about 2 years. No, I had about a year when the obsession was lifted, and I was focused on, well, let me put it this way. I was focused on early recovery. Got a girlfriend right after treatment. She's still sober. It's tight. A lot of times it doesn't happen. She's still sober today. but got a girlfriend right away. And it was sex every day. It was, sex in the car. We were in sober living, so we would have to have sex in the car or like outside, or it was just, and it was a hypersexuality. And she didn't know, and I didn't know that didn't mean love. We still thought like we were in love with each other because of this hypersexuality. And so at one point we were at like the DMV together, and she saw me like in front of her, like have this hyper flirtatious experience with this woman right in front of her. And she was like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't even know what I couldn't even perceive what she was talking about." And she was like, You essentially just tried to fuck this lady in front of me." Like I didn't say anything like that, but it was one of those hype when when you meet someone and it's like, I know that I want to fuck you and you want to fuck me just off meeting each other. So we had this experience, and she was like, "Dude, you got a problem. If you don't realize that that's an issue, you got a problem." And my therapist, I've been with the same therapist in some form for my entire sobriety, and I was referred to him, and he was like, "Hey, man, there's programs for sex addiction." So in 2000, what year was that? In 2015, I went to my first SA meeting, which is, I'm gonna say it because fuck it, because I wanna provide information about sex addiction today. So I went to Sexaholics Anonymous, and the rules in Sexaholics Anonymous are no sex outside of your relationship and no masturbation at all, no period, no porn, no nothing. And I'm in this relationship with this woman, with this gal, and I was with her. I was with her for a year in that I was with her probably 9 months before the sex addiction thing popped up, and then before I went to SA, and I stayed quote unquote sexually sober for a year, and I was willing, for this relationship. I didn't do it for me, but for this relationship to try sexual sobriety, and I didn't masturbate, but I couldn't stop flirting, and I had this shame cycle that I still wanted to fuck everybody. Even though I was with this girl, I still wanted to fuck everyone, and it was like nonstop. And I would fight myself and be like, fuck, like every hot girl that would come in the gym, because this is when I started working in the gym, and promiscuity and the gym go together. If you spend enough time in gym culture, if you're one of those people that just pops in the gym and leaves, but working in a gym, it's very sexually driven. Obviously, people are wearing tight clothes, like muscle fit stuff. Girls are wearing leggings, booties are out, certain exercises. It's just very sexually oriented place, and it still is. And it's also a very homoerotic place when you get into the bodybuilding. I was talking to a friend about it yesterday. It's just, there's a lot of just hypersexually driven environment. But I couldn't stop flirting with these people. And I would just feel that I had this shame cycle. I'm not cheating, and I'm not technically cheating, and I'm not watching porn, but I was busting at the seams with lust. And finally, after I had a mental breakdown, and that's why when I talk about mental illness, I'm not speaking of it flippantly. I'm not speaking of like, oh, I have a little bit of anxiety. I have a little bit of, no, I had a full blown mental breakdown, suicidality. I stopped taking one of my meds and blew this relationship up, hurt this girl so bad, just broke her heart. I think maybe I'm not that important, but it seemed at the time that I broke her heart. She's long moved on in a relationship, probably married or, about to be married soon. So good. I'm happy for her, but I blew this thing up. And through this mental breakdown, got fired from a job, and then left the sex program and said, haha, I stayed sober for a year, and now I'm going to go show you guys I can fuck like a gentleman. And then I went on a run and fucked like 5 people. And then guess what? I met my partner, and my current partner today. And it started that hypersexual relationship again, where you can't keep your hands off each other. It's animalistic. It's just nonstop. And it's we have a son. conceived out of that relationship, and she and I are still together to this day, 5 years later. A little more than 5 years later. So this is my story, and throughout this time, I've had these questions. I've had this whisper of this man in my ear that you're gay, you just don't know it yet. And then these images have flashed back and forth, and this experience flashed back and forth, and it's like I don't know what happened, but I know something bad happened. And this is why I say I want to speak for people who are sexually traumatized, especially men, because it goes so under. It's not spoken about enough. So I'm having this. So I've essentially been in some form of sexual relationship since I was 6 up until I'm now 30. I've never not been in a sexual relationship in my entire life. For most of my life, for 24 years, I've been in some sort of sexual relationship. So that's why I tell people this is not this is not cool to me. The hypersexuality, the even social media, looking at hot girls on social media, looking at big booties on social media, because social media is, for many women, a place to be hyped. Even the most woke women are still using their sexuality in order to garner attention. Even the most conscious intellectual women, doctors, are being hot and using being hot as part of their branding. So this is cultural. And we say it's sex positive, right? And it is sex positive. Be sex positive, but it's just part of our culture, hypersexuality. So what I was talking about last week was sitting in these rooms with these men who are tortured by this, and myself being tortured by this, because with my partner, as I mentioned, I couldn't stop. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to stop and really, really wanted to stop, and I could not. Really wanted to stop and could not. I was just driven by this thing. And I talked to the more men after last week's podcast and getting to know more and more men. They can't stop either. And it looks different. For me, it would be porn, and porn would manifest into physical relationships. And not only physical relationships based off of sexuality, but it would be emotional relationships, because I probably rooting back from this my first nurturing relationship with this man as a child, this codependency, this attention that I received, that's really the manifestation. So it was never about coming. It was never about busting nuts. Busting nuts was a byproduct of the attention, the validation, and the codependency aspect of my addiction. So I tried a number of programs and can never, because the thing with sex addiction, it feels so good. And obviously when I say it feels so good, we think about the sex part. Hold on, let this bitch breathe. Excuse me. When we think about what feels so good, we think about the ejaculation, the climax, the orgasm at the end. That's what feels so good. And yes, feels very good. We all know. But what feels good is the validation and the attention and the being sought after. That feels good. And it is a direct reflection of our social media culture, where it's like getting in real life likes. It's like getting real life likes. It's like, validation, dopamine hit. And that's more so what I've been addicted to. And I'm still addicted to this day. These dopamine hits of validation. So over the years, I've tried a number of programs. There's SAA, there's SCA for people with sexual compulsion issues, compulsive masturbation. There's SAA. There's a wide array of people who deal with issues in sex and lust, and a number of varieties. But over the years, I've gotten to meet the wide array of people who struggle, and that's why I have empathy for the sex offender. I have empathy for the rapist who is tortured by what he's done. I have friends, like I think I shared, a friend of mine who was gay, and he was 37 and hated the fact that he was gay and was not out, and drank. He got drunk. No, he would drink in order to be okay with being gay. That's how he coped with being gay. And then at one point he drank so much and blacked out and sexually assaulted a friend of his, and became a registered sex offender for the rest of his life. But hearing this man speak every week, tortured by his sexuality, tortured by the shame that he felt, and now he has this red stamp label on him for the rest of his life where he can't work places, he can't live places, and it's just, tortured man. And like I told you about the pedophile, like the pedophiles who would come in who hated and were tortured, but the fact that they're pedophiles, and thank God that is not my cup of tea. But I can imagine for a number of men, it's been imprinted. But if you look at my story, this hypersexuality was imprinted at 6. So who knows this guy's story? Maybe he was like, as Aaron shared, maybe he was put into child pornography or really, sexually, really hyperly sexualized as a child. And now this is imprinted. That's something in the sex addiction field they talk about, is imprinting. There's a very fine spot like between 13 and 16 that where people get their kinks, where people get their fetishes and their thing, where people get their thing, and men are very susceptible, whether it be feet or whether it be squirting or whether it be whatever their imprinting is. And now, especially in the era that I grew up, I grew up in, like, I've seen porn tapes, and then the aventation, is that a word? I don't know. And then the come about of the internet, and then like constant availability of pornography. How are we doing on time? 27. Perfect. And then this development of internet porn. So the people my age, men and women my age and down, have this direct access, this direct pipeline to pornography in their pocket or on their iPad or on their laptop. So there's this stage where imprinting happens for a lot of men, where like their kinks are developed. And if you've had a traumatizing event, maybe you have a rape fantasy. I know people with rape fantasies. I know people with feet things. I know people with who are masochists and want to hurt people and hurt themselves or be hurt themselves in order to feel pleasure in some form. So it's just an interesting experience, and I share my experience to let you know. Like, some people say, "Oh, once a cheater, always a cheater." Looking back at cheating, I don't look at it, and I'm not proud of any of it. And when it comes to sexuality, I try not to shame myself, because it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do me any good to shame myself. It just keeps me in a cycle of addiction. It just keeps me in a cycle of hating myself. It just keeps me in a cycle of and what happens a lot of time with that shame cycle, you feel the shame, and then you want to feel out of the shame, so you act out on the behavior in order to bring relief. Then you feel the shame again, and you stay in the shame for a while. Then maybe the shame subsides. Then you're obsessed. Then the obsession comes back, and then you sexually act out. Now you're in the shame. Now you're in that shame again. The shame subsides. Then the craving comes back. It's just, fuck, it is exhausting. And I've said this before, like, I am so tired of looking at butts on like, there's so much ass on Instagram. Like, god damn, there's so much ass on Instagram. It's just like, I'm tired of even thinking about it or like enjoying looking at it. And that's not a healthy relationship to sex, but they say once a cheater, always a cheater. And like, hey man, I don't like that's my story. I don't like that that's my story, and causes and conditions are important. In a lot of times in the Black and Latino community, we're sexualized at a very young age, quote unquote. It's just culturally, and that's a generalization, but there's a lot of this experience in my sphere of influence. I've heard quite a bit of this as of having sex, having full on intercourse as a child. as a child with other children, or before you could even ejaculate, touch, fingering and doing all this, a lot of hypersexuality. And I talked about this with Corey George last year. Let's talk about hypersexuality in the Black community and a trauma response. Is that a conversation we want to have? Like, why are we obsessed with twerking, busting it open, and, fucking all these, fucking around? It's just known. It's just part of, Black hip hop culture, which is essentially Black American culture. It's just part of it. And why is that such a part of our culture? Is it a trauma response? Is it, an escape for us? Is it a level of feeling some sort of validation, which, that validation is saying I can fuck whoever, I can get blowjobs from whoever, I fuck bitches, get money. Is that a response to feeling less than, and to feeling beat up by the world? And that's a whole conversation. I don't know if we're ready for that conversation. And when I have a sex therapist on, I want to have a Black sex therapist on. My therapist is a Black woman who works with sex addicts in particular, and it's been very enlightening. It's been very enlightening, and that the work I talked about doing last year, being in the trenches, was all on this work, was all on this topic, because it's been such a prevalent part of my life. And then couple this all with hypomania, which, if no one's ever experienced someone with mania, it's delusions of grandeur, hyper spending money, hyper confidence, rapid speech, all that. Just go, 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 go. Feel good. It feels so good. It feels so good. It feels so good. And you could fuck 10 people in, a month. Same people in a day, and with no understanding of consequences, because you're fully in delusion. It is a transcendent experience to be in mania. And I spent a number of years in this vast cycle of mania and depression. I've spent years of my life depressed, and I've spent years of my life manic. And people see calm now. It's after years of work, years of meditation, years of recovery, that now I have a calm demeanor. And now on this podcast, this is clear and concise, is it not, Matt? This is clear and linear and concise. So but I have a firm grasp of this experience. So couple all this together, and this is sex addiction. This is my experience of sex addiction. So last week we laughed about it and we make fun, and I laugh about it all the time. I laugh about chicks with dicks all the time, or transgender stuff all the time, because that was a part of my trauma as a child. We just joke about all this stuff because you laugh to keep from crying. But it's all chicks with dicks. That's probably not supposed to be said, but I don't give a fuck, man. Come on, this honestly, dude, it's too confusing. What you can say and what you can't say. Just be cool. I'm not mean. Right? I'm not mean. But yeah, so it's interesting. It led me. So if I'm doing word association, the next thing I wrote, because I wrote 3 sentences, and that 30-minute soliloquy came from 3 sentences. But this calls me back to that conscious congruency podcast we did, where values don't align with your spiritual values don't align with your actions. And I feel like that. I feel like that all the time. My experience with masturbation, my experience with lust, loving my family, loving my partner, wanting to have a normal life, a normal sex life. So, I don't want to have sex every day anymore. I'm not that dude, but just what does a normal sex life look like? I just want that so bad. And my partner and I are working towards that, like a normal sex life, just regular run of the mill. I don't want rock, fireworks going off. Of course, it's nice to have one of those fucking marathon sessions. Those are cool, to do that with someone you love, the wild stuff. But I just want good old garden variety, and we work on that. But then having kids, and this is another topic. I'll actually just slide into another topic right now. If you look at what we deal with as adults, right? I have 2 children at 2 different ages. I have one child who will be 11 in May, and one child who'll be at 4 in March. 2 different ages, entirely different experiences, right? One can take care of himself, but chooses not to. So you have to, not enforce, but encourage. Yeah, encourage and enforce some discipline in his life to take care of himself, brush your teeth and make your bed. And, you have your chores and, blah, blah, blah. And, he does a lot of dirty work. He cleans up the dog poop and takes out the trash, and teaching him that, teaching him balance. Like, okay, you go to school, he goes to after school program and he goes to group learning. So you do your group learning, social distance group learning, and you do your after school. And then you come home, and how much Fortnite should you play? An hour? We limit limiting his screen time on his iPad. Okay, so we have this almost 11-year-old who's about to change drastically in the next 2 or 3 years. He's going to be a whole different person. He'll still have that sweet self inside his heart, but he's about to be a whole different person, in the next couple of years. He may say, and this is my quote unquote stepson. I don't call him my stepson because I've been raising him since he was 5. So he's my kid, but he's about to go through this. He's about to go through this whole experience. And while we're raising 4, 5, 6-year-olds, and that experience, and you're with people don't realize, or people do realize, but we don't say it. Having children from birth until forever, you're creating a person from scratch. And children's first thought's wrong. It's like, oh, I see that glass, let me push it over. Oh, I see the door, I'm gonna open it and I'm running the street. That's just, so we're cultivating this other human. We have this other human over here. So that's one piece of my life. It's one piece of my life. So that's one plate that's spinning. Then I have this relationship that I should be spinning way more often than I am. But we have these 2 kids, and these 2 kids are not sexy. They'll take all the sexual energy out of a room. And then you got to lay in bed with it's nighttime. You got to lay in bed with your son. Okay, now you fall asleep in the bed, and any sexual idea of having sex is out of the window. And then in the middle of the night, the little one comes in bed. You wake up in the morning. Morning sex isn't a thing because there's a little human in your bed. And not only is there the little human in your bed, by 6:30, 7 o'clock, that motherfucker's up and ready to fucking go. So when? And then she works a 9 to 5. I work my job. I work from home. Then I live in San Diego part-time. That's another thing. I'm in San Diego. I'm in a desert. I'm in San Diego and I'm in the desert. And then I'm raising 2 kids. And then I got this relationship that I should be spinning, but we're doing business. We're making sure the life stays together. Then I got this business that's growing and thriving, and it's a lot of fun, and I love doing what I'm doing, and it's intense. And this is the first quarter, so I'm driven right now. I'm creating a lot of content and redoing the website and coaches and and then I'm doing 12-step. And now I'm joining another 12-step fellowship, starting my own meeting and another 12-step fellowship dealing with sex specifically. So to be honest with you, if you ask me where I'm at right now, I'm sitting here like, what the fuck am I doing, dude? This is adulthood. This is not adulthood for everybody, but this is adult. If you got kids and a business, this is it, man. Showtime. We want it to grow up, and this is fucking showtime. It is game time. And sometimes I feel like I don't know what to do. And then I have this looming obsession with lust and this biological drive times 1,000 that I'm combating and I'm dealing with, on top of that. And I say this because many, many, many people are dealing with this. And hey, if you're listening and you know someone who's dealing with something similar, send them this podcast, because let them know they're not alone. If you're a woman, and I want to talk about the female perspective because I spend time in rooms with women, the codependency and using your body as negotiation You know, like, oh, I'm gonna marry the rich guy and I'm gonna fuck him and stay hot in order to maintain this relationship. Or I want this guy to like me. I'm gonna suck his dick even though I don't really want to. Or I'm gonna fuck this guy even though I don't really want to, but I like him and I want him to like me. Or I want the validation and attention. I don't want to date anybody, but I want everybody in my DMs. Like there's all, and then there's obviously porn addiction and compulsive masturbation for women as well. But his level of that codependency validation thing happening as well, you know? So if you know anybody who's struggling with this, share this with them. But I heard someone say something that was so profound to me. And I heard someone say about solutions. He said, it's amazing how much resistance we have to change and to growth compared to the amount of relief you will feel when you're in a solution. And that, I wrote that down in a meeting. I was like, that's amazing, because like we will allow ourselves to feel immense amounts of pain, knowing that there's some potential solution on the other end. I'm depressed, and all you can do is pick up a phone, and you could do telehealth. You could do so many different forms of therapy. There's apps that'll find BetterHelp, that'll find you a therapist all over the world, all over the country. You can, and it's just this little line that you just have to step over, and you can find relief. Or like you can go to your doctor and say, "Hey, doc, something's off balance. I need my blood work done. I need to talk to somebody." And your doctor can refer you. Or you're struggling with your drinking, and all you got to do is walk into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, or walk into a room of NA or CA or HA or whatever A you want to go to. You could walk in that room and say, "Hey, I need help." All you got to do is step in the door. You know, even if you're in recovery, all you got to do is some steps. All you got to do is meditate. All you got is these little steps that we can take. There's so much resistance to those steps, but the amount of relief you acquire on the other side surpasses the amount of resistance. But what is that resistance? So I want to tell you, you can feel better. How what my old sponsor would say to me, "Eric, you could be as well as you want to be." How profound that is. She's like, you could be as healthy as you want to be. You know, you don't have to suffer, dude. You choosing to suffer. Pain is life, but you don't have to suffer. You can be as well as you want to be. Get to work. You can grow. You can improve. Just stop resisting. Stop. You know, what's stopping you from your growth? Is it pride? And we're gonna get into this. We're gonna break this down into two things. Is it pride in the sense that I'm too proud to ask for help? Or is it the pride that says I'm okay? I'm just having a hard time. I'm tough. I can deal. Or pride saying I could do this on my own, or whatever. Is it that pride, that ego that we're talking about? That enemy of yours, that ego is your enemy? Still reading that, Ryan Holiday, such a good book. Is it that pride stopping you from getting that help? Or is it the pride in reverse that says I'm the worst? I'm not worth it. I'm not worth the help. I'm sick. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I got too much baggage. That pride in reverse that stops you from just stepping over that line and making a change in your life. What are we doing on time? Perfect. We're wrapping it up. So is it that pride? Is that pride that tells you that you're fine? Or is it that pride in reverse, you know, that tells you that you're the worst, that you don't deserve it? You know, both come from self-centeredness. That's high-level kung fu shit. So this was very linear podcast. Very linear podcast. I'm very proud of this one. Very straightforward. I didn't do a lot of moving, just talked right into the microphone. But, you know, I just want to finish on this. We have these imaginations and self-delusions run wild. At least I do. But I know, if I feel it, I know other people are feeling it. But I have these delusions in my life that tell me sometimes that my brain, remember, if you remember, I remember, fuck. Sometimes you just say remember, you know? But if you remember, we talked about, it doesn't matter what you're thinking, it matters what your feet are doing. You know, my brain lies to me still. 7 years sober, doing a podcast, coaching people, got some wisdom. I'm pretty wise guy, you know? Pretty thoughtful dude, but my brain still lies to me and tells me I ain't shit. My brain still lies to me. Oh, you're fine. You don't need to call anybody. Oh, you're fine. You're sober 7 years, dude. You're not going to drink. You don't need to go to that meeting. You don't need to do those steps. You don't need to work with other guys. You don't need to go to therapy this week. Everything's good. Couples therapy. My partner and I go to couples therapy even when things are fine, because when I start thinking things are fine, is that we're not checking in, and that's something I'll encourage everybody to do. Couples therapy. Do 30-minute couples therapy sessions once a week if your therapist will offer that, just to check in after you get work through it, and do it even when you're fine, just to check in. Well, anyway, my brain lies to me, and it's not what my brain is doing, it's what my feet are doing. It's not what my brain is telling me, it's what actions am I taking. But what's stopping you? And cut that resistance shit out. I did barely curse today too. That's pretty tight. But stop the resistance. You just step over the line, and you can start finding a solution, to the sex problem, to the relationship problem, to the depression problem, to the anxiety problem, to the healing from the sexual trauma, healing from the emotional abuse. A line you can step over. You don't have to suffer. There will be pain throughout that process. It's like shedding skin. And I say this, and I'll finish with this. It's 20 miles into the forest, 20 miles out. I tell people that all the time. I see people in their recovery struggling. I see people in their lives, in their relationships, struggling from going through a hard time. Even in my own relationship with all the infidelity. And I think, why is it not better yet? 20 miles into the forest, 20 miles out, bitch. You walked your way into this wilderness. You have to find your way out, and you have to journey your way out. And there's no shortcuts. So we'll finish on that. Go to bigmoodcoach.com. I'm doing sober coaching. I'm doing life coaching, goal setting, and planning. We're transforming lives. We're doing it. We're transforming lives. Fitness and lifestyle coaching. If you're listening, go to Big Mood TV. Eric_Big Mood Coach. We're everywhere. We're everywhere you can be. But I hope you learned something from this podcast, and just shared a lot about myself. So no one can say I'm not a fucking real one, right? No one can say that shit. Anyway, we're up out of here. Peace.